ladies and gentlemen, welcome back. Christian, how's it going?
Great.
Woo! All right.
Glad to be here.
We are now on day 37 of this ridiculous shutdown. And yes, it's officially a record. Congratulations, Trump, for setting not just the longest shutdown, but the longest two shutdowns of all time. Of course, obviously, it's not his fault. This is Congress. And so this is the longest in history. Obviously, once again, this is the Democrats playing political games, right? It just so that we're clear about this, the Republicans have tried, I think, 14 times? 14 times.
At least.
At least. Trying to put, not even counting the behind the scenes work and all the, back and forth, 14 votes at least trying to push this very clean continuing resolution with no priorities, just let's keep the government open. That's all the whole document says.
Yeah, and it was just until November. It wasn't like they were asking for this for like 5 years or something. It was just, until November. Now they're asking for it until January.
Right. And November, right? Yeah. If you guys, for those who've been following this, November was the thing that the Democrats are fighting over wouldn't have even expired by November, right? Like it would have. They could have still debated it and stuff but anyway. So we're fighting back and forth. The Democrats have voted against keeping the government open. So
all but I think 3 have finally come over. But
yeah, 3. Fetterman, of course, has been at least the voice of reason for the Democrat Party, saying that, this is unacceptable. And I wish more people would listen to him. He seems to be like one of the few Democrats that is willing to just, dispense with all these political games and just tell it like it is.
We need 4 more senators. 4 more senators to support.
4 more would be nice. Now, there are alternatives, right? There are other ways to do this. One is one interesting piece of legislation that came up. What I want to mention quickly was John Kennedy mentioned he's wants to introduce a bill that essentially ties the congressional salaries to the government so that they're part of the appropriation. So that if government stops, so does their pay, and then that might move things along a little bit, which is kind of interesting. But the other one is the nuclear option, is what they call it, right? Which is basically for the Senate to just vote to change the Senate rules, right? And just say, all right, from now on, appropriations are by a simple majority. And they can do that vote with a simple majority. So all it takes is a simple majority to make it, which seems to defeat the whole point, right? Like, why does someone's going to have to explain to me why you would set up a measure that says you need 60 votes if you can defeat that measure with 51 votes, right? That seems to me like this is the kind of redundant stupidity that happens in politics all the time. Anyway, I don't see anybody. Are any guests in according to you? I don't see anybody in yet. I'm going to see if I can get my friend in here. But anyway, as you guys come in, say hi, please. Hi, like, share, and subscribe, and let us know what you think about the shutdown as it's going on. And meanwhile, so that's the nuclear option. Now, of course, what they're worried about is, if the Republicans change it so that the Republicans can get things through with a 51 vote majority, then when the Democrats are in power, if they're ever in power again, they can do the same thing. Now, the first question I have, of course, obviously this whole thing is kind of ridiculous, but the first question is, couldn't the Republicans vote to change it, push this through, and then vote to change it back?
Yes, but once the precedent set, if the Democrats get a majority, then they can do it. It's essentially they've said they already removed the nuclear option for judges. It's a special session. They have to go in a special session to approve judges. So that, but the Senate's supposed to take a little bit more time, be a little bit more deliberative, not be like the House. If they make it on a 50-50, it'll be just like the House of Representatives kind of thing. And so that's just trying to retain a little bit of the character of the Senate. We lost the Senate. Senators used to be appointed by state legislatures. They didn't used to be voted on. And making them popularly elected by the states has changed their role a lot as far as There's
Right.
supposed to be a little bit of a break and supposed to
Right.
represent property owners and wealthy people, right? The
Right.
slam against them, especially in the Gilded Age, but even in art was the Millionaires Club, and right, because these were people that had influence with state legislatures,
Right.
and they would usually elect successful people who are retired or whatever to become their senators. So by making it more popular, we've kind of made it more like the House anyway. So this is kind
Right.
of the last thing historically that retains a difference
Right.
between the House and the Senate. So
Yeah,
they're
and that's
loath
fair.
to get rid of it for appropriations.
Yeah, that's fair. And I mean, yeah, I mean, obviously, I never really understood why we separate I mean, even in the Constitution, it's like, the
Mhm.
necessary and proper clause is like anything that Congress would do, they also need the stuff to do it, right? Like it just goes hand in hand. It's funny that they decided to separate that, basically like Civil War era ish. They basically are like, we're create a separate committee for appropriations, and that's never I've never really understood why that is the case, because you would think that, simple enough. If you vote to do something, you should automatically vote to fund doing that, right? But what do I know? I mean, I'm a humble commoner, and this is
Yes,
this is
yes.
above my.
I'm not a smart man, but ways and means and appropriations mean the following things to me. And then, yeah. So,
Now, one
yeah.
thing I wanted to do, well, I wanted to actually give you guys kind of a retraction of sorts, because, believe it or not, I actually I provided information that it was correct, but I didn't provide the full context. So I'm going to go back and give a little more context. I actually basically blamed both parties for the spin involved in this shutdown, and they are still involved in spin, but the Republicans much less so now that I've done a lot more research, right? So like originally I thought that the thing that the Republicans claim, that their major contention is that a lot of this extra money that the Democrats are fighting for would go directly to illegal immigrants. And I thought that that was largely overstated. It's actually not. After doing a lot more research, I found out like all these additional, and I had to hunt for this too, by the way. This is the kind of stuff where they don't tell you, they just sort of they say their soundbite, and it's up to us to have to do all the legwork to figure it out. But I found out there's an additional backdoor type of policy that can be used, which like states can the federal government gives subsidies to the states, but the federal government also gives subsidies. They don't give subsidies directly to undocumented, immigrants, but they will give subsidies to, like, for example, kids who are citizens, but their parents are undocumented immigrants, right? So that's one of the games that's played, right? And obviously, the kid's not technically getting the money because kids don't own anything in America. You don't own anything until you're 18. It's the parents that are getting the money, right? So they are in fact illegal immigrants are in fact getting direct money from the government. And there's also like several other ways. And I mean I could bore you guys with it, but like if you're interested, we can have a more in-depth conversation about it, but it's kind of like complex. But there are, in fact, actually 4 or 5 different loopholes that people can use to basically get money directly from the government, the federal government, into illegal immigrants' hands. And that's not even counting the indirect ways, which are still on the table. And there's even like proposed legislation from the Democrats that would just like that would sweep the whole thing over. It would just be like, all right, now we have legally on the books that you can put, right? There was a piece of legislation that came out in July called, and it has an outrageously long name, something like, okay, right. It's the Health Equity and Access Under the Law for Immigrant Families Act, right? Outrageously long. But this act literally proposed by the Democrats would in fact just allot ACA to everyone. And I'm like, it's just like all residents, all residents of
All
America.
subsidies, COVID quality subsidies. Yeah.
So yeah, so like this
You
actually
can fog a
wasn't.
mirror. Yeah.
Yeah, now is that as big of a deal as they maybe make it seem? Maybe not. But they Mike, I will take it back. Mike Johnson is actually essentially just on the level when he says that a lot of the game plan is to just take a bunch of extra money and move it into illegal immigrants' hands, as well as everybody else. This whole thing would cost a very, very low, I think like $1.5 trillion extra over 10 years, which is it's a lot. It's a lot of money. It's not. It's more than I make in a day.
Yeah. Well, and we're already in a deficit. So it's
Yeah.
like that would be nice to have if we could afford it.
Right. So anyway, with that in mind, let's turn to what we want to focus on today is more specifically SNAP and Medicaid and government subsidy programs like welfare in general, and to discuss government's role in that game, and specifically the American government, like the federal government's role in that game. And with that in mind, Christian, if you want to give us some brief history on these programs.
So yeah, so food stamps originally were created during the Great Depression, right? As you would imagine, there was a lot of unemployment, and part of the New Deal, there were one of the things they dealt with was food surpluses were a thing because they were worried that would crash the price of things, price of milk, price of stuff, and so they were worried about that. But there were a lot of poverty and things. So the first food stamps program where you had to purchase food stamps. So say you're a struggling family and your monthly food budget was $200, right? You would go and spend $150. You would buy $150 of these, they're called gold food stamps, right?
Okay.
Or 200, maybe right. And then you would get equivalent of 50% of whatever you spend in these blue stamps.
Okay.
And those blue stamps, right, you can use to purchase surplus food.
Okay.
Right? That the government was having, right? So the gold stamps had no restrictions. You could buy whatever you wanted in the store with them, right? Essentially, you paid for them, right? You can see no restrictions. And however much you paid got you these blue stamps, but they were specifically, you would go and get food that was marked as surplus, that the government was buying just to shore up prices.
Okay.
Right? Now, that program existed until 1943, when it didn't need to exist anymore because there wasn't so much unemployment and there wasn't any food shortages. In fact, they were rationing, right? So they stopped food stamps. So they brought them back in 1961.
Right.
In that time, they had a lot of studies. They sort of explored them. They were actually authorized under Eisenhower, but he didn't start the program. Kennedy did, and it was still the same thing where you would buy stamps with kind of what your monthly budget was for food, and then they would give you these stamps. Now again, it wasn't for surplus, but they would give you these blue stamps that were supposed to be used for perishable items, like fresh fruits, things that would go bad. And so that's sort of what that program was for a long time. And then it became a little bit more, but there were a lot of eligibility issues, not just your income, those, work requirements, all kinds of things. So in 1964, under Johnson, the program was expanded and made a little bit more generalized. In the 70s, it became a little bit more broad, easier to get onto, and kept expanding. By 78, I believe that about 18 million people on it, right? And so it kept it, right. And then, right, and in our time, right, under Biden, right, they made it like basically if you signed up, you were going to get the benefits. They weren't looked at very closely. So obviously, lots of people who are legal citizenship, there are no requirements on work. If you could show something that showed you were low income or had any type of need, you could qualify. The threshold was very, very low. So in the big, beautiful bill, the Republicans finally put back in some, citizenship requirements and proof of, right. And Trump, under the DOGE kind of government audit, the Secretary of Agriculture, who runs the SNAP program, asked all states to submit their data for who's getting food stamps,
Right.
Hey, we need to know what's going on. Obviously, all the red states did, and no states that are governed by Democrats gave their data over, right? Horton, no, you can't have our data, And obviously, Doge found, there was some fraud in the red states and things that had to be cleaned up.
Of course.
And we're still fighting for data from the blue states. But one of the big things is by cutting off SNAP to illegals or ACA benefits like we talked about before,
Right.
what we're finding is that it incentivizes again more and more people to self-deport.
Yeah.
Right. And the government's willing to give you $1,000 to help and do other things to help you self-deport because it costs them about $18,000 to deport somebody.
Yeah, to find them and everything.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and all the paperwork and all the manpower. So if
Right.
you're willing to self-deport, right, and you declare that, like, they will take off the priority. All right, we're not going to come get you in the middle of the night and And in fact, once you successfully arrive in your home country, we'll give you $1,000 US, right,
Right.
type thing. So the Democrats in blue states, California, right, especially, do not want this.
Of
They do
course.
not
Of
want
course.
to lose their population, right? Because
Right.
the counts, these are apportionment, this is the power, right? So they're
Yeah.
very, very keen on retaining these benefits to keep these people here, and are sort of painting it as a humanitarian issue, while they see it largely as a power issue of sort of,
Yeah.
these
Of course.
people are capable of feeding themselves. Now, one of the things too is um, right, maybe we can talk about this too, is
Sure.
people don't it doesn't necessarily solve starvation, right?
Right. Of course
The
not.
SNAP benefits, right? There's another program called WIC that's kind of for the most of all women and infant children, right?
Right.
And that they have to get, necessary things to those who are most at risk, right?
Right.
Expecting mothers who've just given, or not expecting, but recently delivered mothers and their infant children, things like that. So SNAP, right, and we can talk about this too, right? You
Yep.
have maybe some more experience too. Became something where there's been some fraud, or even it became so lax. People were selling their SNAP benefits
Oh
because,
yeah.
right, even now, right, because you can't purchase alcohol, whatever restrictions you can't purchase with it. People would sell their SNAP benefits for cash, 50 cents on the dollar, or 1/3 on the dollar, type of thing like that. So that you
Right.
can get around those restrictions. And so there's questionable whether this was actually solving starvation as it's sort of been portrayed by the Democrats now. So
Of course.
that's just sort of the history of the current situation.
Well, yeah. And thank you for that. And you know what? Well, it's one of those things where, and I don't want to like paint with too broad a brush, but the type of person that ends up on SNAP, the marginalized community, they're usually just on average. There's a lot of stats that you can follow to look this up too. They're on average just a little bit worse with their money. They're a little bit worse with their nutrition too, right? So like they end up with like when they do these studies, they check to see, what types of food these people are buying, the SNAP recipients are buying. And pound for pound, SNAP recipients are just less healthy than the people who are not on SNAP. They end up getting a lot more like things like soda and junk food and stuff like that. Part of that is, when you're financially constrained, those products like pound for pound, calorie per calorie are often the cheapest, right? So like you can get like a jar of peanut butter, which will have a lot of calories in it for a relatively low price. You can get like
Mm.
lots and lots and lots of ramen, which basically doesn't have hardly anything in it except for, it's just stuff to put inside your body, right? To make you feel like you are eating. Right. But that being said, that's unfortunately also the type of person that's on SNAP is also more often the type of person that would try to abuse the extra money. So you often have people who will like get $300 a month for SNAP, and they'll use 100 of it because all they need is 100. They just get 24 packs of ramen, and like a gallon of milk and 3 gallons of soda, and then they sell the other 200 so that they can buy drugs or whatever, they use it for the rest of their life because they're already financially constrained, and that's just how it is, right? And then I've had friends that do it. I'm on, I'm ashamed to say that I was once on SNAP, and one of my roommates even did stuff like that. So, and I mean, that was before I even knew it was a thing, but apparently it's very, very common. People sell it all the time, which is against the law, right? Like, and they shouldn't be doing it, but they do it. One thing that I really dug into this, and I'm not gonna like hit you with just like a bunch of numbers because I think it would be boring. But I want to tell you guys, I literally spent about 20 hours just researching this and every little aspect of it because I was very interested to see if SNAP actually worked. Right, like the concept of SNAP is to make people more nutritious, so that make there's no food insecurity at home, so that there's no crunch, right? Like you're not going to have people like skipping meals or like just like not eating when they should, or like not providing for their children, or like them sacrificing giving food to their children. You just want everybody to essentially be fed, and that's what the program was originally designed for. And so with that in mind, I looked at study after study after study after study just to see what the trends are. And I can tell you that when this program in its modern form, which is like 1974-ish, when it first started, the amount of starvation was actually lower proportion wise than it is now, right? And when it was done in 1974, there were only like 6% of the population was on SNAP. And in now today, it's more like 13-14% of the population is on SNAP. So literally more than double people are on SNAP now, and we have more starvation now than we did when the program was revised to its modern form. So it's obviously not working. This is what, if we get through nothing
Right.
else.
Well, I'll just interject.
Yeah, yeah.
Like a lot of times, it's conceptualized like, oh, when people have a temporary layoff, right? When you're in between jobs, you'll have this, and then once you get the job, you'll drop the. Or maybe you're a seasonal worker, you make a lot of money, and then you're off for, then you'll use it to augment sort of your lean times and things like that. Teachers used to do that when they'd be out for the summer; they didn't get a paycheck, so getting some extra money for food, kind of thing like that. But yeah, what it's not, it has become a temporary thing that people just use to augment when they're going through a tough period. It becomes a lot more permanent, like people that
Oh
are
yeah.
using the SNAP for longer than a year,
Oh
right?
yeah. Yeah,
Right?
almost every. As a matter of fact, that's the
Yeah.
other thing that
Yeah.
happened too, is people would just extend and extend and extend and like
Mhm.
get on it for 2 years and then using it. Even when I used it for my roommate, was I had a dependent once who was just basically freeloading off of me, and I'm like, well, let me just get something so that they can stop eating my food, right? Even when that happened, like they had work requirements that you had to fill out every week, right? Like someone had to show them like, hey, look, this is either what I'm doing or where I tried to work. You'd have to submit your applications, and they don't even do that anymore. Like Obama basically killed that. And back then, even when you were doing that, like even if you showed, all you had to do was basically show that you were like trying, and you didn't even really have to try. You just had to show that you were trying, right? And then if as long as you did that, they would extend you basically forever. Like I think my roommate got it for like 3 years. You're not even supposed to be able to do that for 3 years. I think two was supposed to be the hard cap, and he just got
Yeah.
like exception after exception after exception, and it just never. And then I also looked at studies that like tracked malnutrition, right? And again, we are far more malnutritious as a nation today than when the program started. And as the program ramps up, our nutrition and our starvation gets worse and worse and worse. So obviously this program isn't solving the problem, even if it was supposed to be done by federal government, and we're going to talk about that in a minute.
Yeah.
Even if it was like a perfectly above board program that the federal government should be doing, this isn't working, right? So let's just throw that out there.
Well, if its primary goal is to, yeah, end starvation, or provide this, like it's not working as intended,
No,
right?
no.
If the job is to get you relying on the government, or you want to drive up food prices by inflating and or subsidizing grocery stores, right? If
Right.
there are other sort of shadow goals, maybe that's what they're defining their success by, and why they want to
Yep.
expand it, right? But the stated goals is definitely, I think, what we would say is less effective. To
Absolutely. Yeah.
be to
Now,
be
yeah, that.
to be to be mild. Yeah.
Yeah, right, absolutely.
Mm.
Well, and right, that is the game. Which you touched upon it. One of the games that's played with like all these wealth redistribution programs is there what people call like economic multipliers. It like doesn't actually change the amount of like stuff that's being produced in society, doesn't actually change the amount that's actually being consumed, but it looks like it does on paper because the money
Is it?
siphons through
Yeah. Is
more
it like
cycles.
printing money when you say, okay, you have these SNAP benefits? Does
Right.
that? I mean, I guess we pay for it, but it feels a little bit just sort of like this might be a source of inflation,
Yeah.
and shutting down SNAP for a while. I'd really be interested if we're studying like the results of sort of food inflation during
Oh yeah.
this time period. Yeah.
So with that in mind, not like I said, I wasn't going to bore you guys with numbers, but here I am
No.
boring you with numbers.
Yeah.
There actually was a study that I came across where they basically tracked the effects of adding work requirements into able-bodied adults, which is like exactly what we were going to be looking at here, right? And number one, SNAP enrollment dropped by like a considerable margin. Nobody starved, right? Like they just stopped using the program because they don't need it. They never needed it. It was never part, right? They just don't need the program. So they just stopped using it. And that was it. Like that was essentially the whole thing. And inflation actually like took a small dip in those states. So it was like literally everything got cheaper. We stopped relying on the government. It was just good stuff happened when we just used the program less. So I don't know why we play these games. But with that in mind, I do want to talk about like the just wealth redistribution in general, right? And why people like Christian and I who are conservative, we just not really fans of wealth redistribution programs.
Certainly not on a federal level. Like if a
Right.
state wants to administer a food stamp program, like that's one thing. This just feels so out of pocket for a federal
Right.
agency, for the U.S. Department of Agriculture.
Absolutely right. So right, yeah, for a typical conservative, and I'm no exception. Basically, I want things to be done at the local most level, right? Because if you look around, the people who are going to have the most in common with your needs are going to be the people who are closest to you. No one's going to understand the situations that you're in more than your family, your roommates, the people that are like living with you. No one's going to understand, at the next layer out, no one's going to understand more than your community, your local schools, your local churches, the people you interact with daily. And then the next layer out is your city, your county. Then after that, the state, and then after that, finally, the federal government, right? It doesn't get there until the very end. And so 9 times out of 10, if there's a program to be run, it will always be most targeted, best targeted, most efficient at the local most level that you can run it on. And there's tons of reasons for that too. Like the amount of bureaucracy that's necessary for like a community-based program is just so much smaller than the amount of bureaucracy that's necessary to run something at the federal level. Right? Like, do you know how many employees work for SNAP and Medicaid? It's mind-boggling. Right? And like if you think about like just taking money, right? Because that's all this is wealth redistribution. We're taking money from taxpayers and giving it to somebody else who presumably needs it. Hopefully, sometimes they don't even, but hopefully they need it, right? So if you've got this giant group of people in the middle who all require salaries, right? And like you take this money from person A and you siphon it through this giant group of people who are like, well, gimme, 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 and then they finally pitch it out to somebody else who needs it. It's like, by the time you get from point A to point C, a lot of the money's gone. You're looking at like, I don't know, I don't even know how to track it. 50% efficiency, 30%, 10, you know?
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot, and the point of SNAP is really at this point is for the people in the federal bureaucracy who run it to keep their jobs.
Exactly. Exactly.
That
That
becomes
is
the
the goal.
bureaucracy's number one goal. Feeding or preventing starvation becomes an ancillary oops, maybe even a side effect, right? And so part of the thing is you want to target places where, right, food deserts, where normal food distribution capitalism is failing. And a lot of places that are successful don't need this. But when you have a federal agency, when it's not at the local level, you just paint everybody with the same thing, right?
Right.
You just say, well, everybody must have this. I'm as necessary to somebody, here in DC as somebody in
Right.
Nebraska somebody in the Central Valley of California, or somebody in Alaska. And those are all widely desperate circumstances as far as access to food goes, right? And
Absolutely.
need weather, all kinds of stuff. But local levels, can deal with that. But yeah, you're gonna want to see, it's like if you're a hammer, everything's a nail.
Right.
That's everybody needs your food benefits when your job depends on it. And your federal agency sitting in DC.
Absolutely. Yep. And then so like the other thing that conservatives like myself typically want to maximize is personal responsibility. Right. And that's a big one for me, right? Like I believe that one of the things that made America into the greatest nation on earth is the fact that we were all very, very self-reliant. We were all very independent, very capable of managing our own lives, right? We were all capable, and if we couldn't manage our own lives, we usually were able to rely upon the family unit to step in and assist, right? And that was huge. Like in family, that's what families are for, is like helping you get back on your feet when things go wrong. Well, one thing that's really concerning to me is this trend that we're turning into like this kind of like everybody's kind of an island in America, right? And we kind of like lose track of our family units. And like even if we have track of them, we don't want to ask them for help ever. We'd rather just like ask these nameless people, faceless people from, over the tax barrier or whatever. And that's a problem for me because I think number one, it takes the personal connection out of the situation, right? Like if I need help and I go to Christian, I say, look, hey man, can you do me a solid? And Christian helps me, right? There's a lot of things that are going on there that are lost when you have the government do it. Like, first of all, there's a level of personal responsibility that I have to accept, right? I have to say, hey, look, I've failed in some measure that I need to ask somebody personally for help, right? I have to, to own that myself. There's a level of camaraderie that comes with it. Christians actually then become a person that has stepped up and helped me in my time of need. There's going to be a situation where I'm going to try to do it in return, right? I'm going to try to like help return that favor. So the social networks just get a lot tighter, right? Everything comes together. But it's the opposite when you have the government do it. When you have the
Yeah.
government step in,
The
then it's like
weekends, yeah.
it's
We,
like
yeah.
it's the opposite. Not only does it get to, it's weird too, because there's some weird like psychological games that happen. Not only do people asking the government for money feel like they don't have to ask, they feel
Yeah.
like they're owed it. They feel like it
Yeah.
gets to the point where, like, if the government isn't giving them someone else's free money, then it's like all of a sudden it's a problem. Like my ex roommate was like that. He was like he got to the point where it's like the government would be like, all right, we're stepping down your SNAP benefits from 350 a month to 300. He's like, what? What is going on? They're taking all of my money. And I'm like, no, they're taking all of my money.
Yeah.
And that's what they're doing. And they're letting me keep a small fraction of it. That's it. That's it. But that personal responsibility thing to me is huge. I think that everyone in America, for the most part, should manage their own lives. Now, obviously, there's going to be some exceptions here and there, but they should be the exceptions, not the rule, right? It should be like this person has like a mental health problem, right? And needs to be, either disabled or something. Okay, that person maybe we help, right? But not like
Well,
my
WIC,
roommate.
right? I mean, my wife was on WIC too. We were on WIC, and then like when our kids aged out of it, just like boom, it's gone. It's like,
Right,
all right, this was there to help you when and nice to have when you're there, but it's
right,
not like you're not entitled to this forever, right? This
exactly,
is right. And
exactly.
right, and I think this is right. So obviously, I mean, to dovetail on this a little bit, um, Mondani has been in the news lately, right? He won
Yeah.
New York City mayor, and as an avowed, self-described democratic socialist is what he calls himself. Did you hear anything from his speech?
Snippets, very, very small
All right,
sections
yeah,
of it,
yeah.
but yeah.
Well, the section that applies to our discussion today is he said that there is no matter too big or too small
Yes.
that the government shouldn't care about it. Okay,
Wow.
right? Right. And so ideologically, that is so un-American.
Yes.
So un-American, right? And our on our core, we're a limited government, right? That we have our freedom, we give the government power to do things and that are necessary, but we retain our freedom. To say that there's no issue the government shouldn't weigh in on, right? That we can't say nothing is not the government's business, right? Is terrifying. And so here's my spicy take a little bit on the need for government intervention, i.e., socialism.
Yeah.
Socialism is essentially the government what the free market would provide, the government provides. So a
Right.
supermarket that provides food. Now the government sets up a supermarket that still sells food or to people, but and so now it's competing against capital for-profit stores, right?
Right.
You know, where in a sort of non-profit model kind of thing. And what happens is socialists love to come in to a functioning market like New York, a wealthy, thriving city, and take over and start doing, all right, now the government's going to do this and do this. Especially he's talking about we're going to have grocery stores and we're going to control the rental market. And
Yay.
right. And my spicy take is like if you think that socialism is really the answer,
Right.
you should go to a failing community.
Yeah.
Like Gary, Indiana, if you know anything about Gary, Indiana.
Not at all.
Yeah. Okay. So it's it's right on the banks of the Lake Michigan, just a little bit east of Chicago.
Okay.
Right. It's where Michael Jackson was from. Anyway, it was a very prosperous town for a lot of times, and it is.
Well, that explains it.
It is the epitome of Rust Belt decay.
Right. Right.
And yeah, so you'd have food deserts here. You'd have, capitalism. People are not starting businesses there; they're fleeing in droves. So if this is a community that maybe needs services that aren't being provided by the free market, let's see if the government can come in there, run them well, and improve the quality of life for people and improve that. You don't need to come into a functioning system and impose socialism. And this is sort of get us back, like SNAP is like people are able to functional and feed themselves, right? Maybe having a system, a limited system for women and infant children, right, makes sense. Or when you had, in the Depression, you had surplus food that the government was buying just to prop up prices,
right?
And you have this food that you're giving that surplus food away to the most needy,
right?
To now, to the modern iteration where you have a credit card and you can purchase with very little restrictions. You just are given money. You don't have to put up any of your own money to purchase stamps, anything like that. Very different sort of agreement, tacit social agreement, social contract. And so then it degrades. So one thing that happens, maybe they've talked about, we've heard this before, like in Africa where people donate a lot of clothes.
Yeah.
It's really hard if you're going to open up, if you want to open a business selling clothes, right? You want to open up an Old Navy in Africa, and they're just getting all these donations of free clothes from the U.S. all the time, right? Means how are you going to So there are very few places to purchase clothes, and everybody relies on that. So what you happen is you're going to take New York, which has a thriving ability to bring, of for-profit supermarkets to get goods, high-quality goods in there and feed their population. Now they're going to compete against state-run stores that don't have the same profit concerns and the same cost that they have. They're going to be, they're going to be going to business or take their business other way. And then you're going to end up relying, the only stores that will be around with the government. And when you're reliant, where you can only go to the government for you're up a creek. Like it's one thing to have it as an option, right? Or a fail safe, like at the last resort.
Right.
I have this thing, or it's my only way I can meet my need. That is terrifying. And should really, I think, be reserved for only the most failing cities, that as a way to sort of breathe, a temporary way to breathe life into them.
Yeah.
And hopefully
maybe
bring in people. And even then it's questionable, but I would be more interested to see that than to see socialism in placed on a wealthy, thriving, working, functioning city.
Well, I mean, yeah, it's like you said, if you're in trouble when you're reliant on the government, and especially like people think that, the common left critique is that, all these evil corporations are being all corporationy and they make money and they're horrible people and stuff like that. Well, it's funny to see, corporations compete against each other. And then finally, you'll see somebody like wrestle their way to the top, and then they can kind of set the market, right? And like the left loses their mind. But when the government does it, they don't seem to mind. And the government does the exact same thing. The government will muscle out the competition, and they can do it with legal force. They don't even have to do it like with market savvy. They don't have to do it with any kind of like innovation or creating a product that nobody else has. They can just say, all right, that's it. We're gonna set up this shop, and no one else is allowed to sell blah 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 at a price higher than X, or even compete with us in a square mile radius of blah blah blah. And
or
then
they can just lose money at a way that a for-profit company could not. They could just
right.
sell stuff so low that they lose money, and it doesn't matter to them. They're the government.
Right, because it's not their money they're losing. They're losing our money. They're losing the taxpayers' money. And then when the other businesses all go out of business because they can't compete, then like they forget about all the fallout that comes with that. Number one, commerce is down. Everybody's out of work because you just shut down like a whole market, right? Now you have the only prices that are available, and guess what the government does? They raise their prices because they're the only people there, because they have the monopoly, they have the power. And people think that they think that only private companies do this. No, governments will absolutely exploit power. They will absolutely exploit being the only person in a market. If you don't believe me, just take a look at what power companies do today. Power companies do it all day long. Like, take a look
at when it comes to votes, are you exercising your freedom of speech? Are you protesting against the government when they control your food access?
Right.
Right. And then who are you going to vote for? It's like, oh, I'll lower prices at the food, right? That becomes not
right.
not who's good policy, right? It's who can give this government benefit, right?
That's Mamdani. Mamdani's like his whole. I mean, it reminds me of running as like student class body president, because it's like the person who wins is just the person that goes up there and says, "I'll give you all free stuff." That's all they have to say. Like, and now we get ice cream every Friday, and everybody's like, "Yeah, we get ice cream," and it's like, of course he can't give you ice cream every Friday, but they say it, right? And nobody stops to ask, well, wait, how are you going to pay for this ice cream? Right? It doesn't matter. You just promise the world and just hope that nobody.
I was student body president of my high school, and my campaign promise was, "I'll give you a shorter school year."
Right. Exactly.
In small print, I said, "He can give you," and then in big print, it said, "A shorter school year." Right. So I wasn't going to give him a shorter. But if you didn't read the fine print, you would think I was going to give you a shorter school year.
That's awesome. That is awesome. All right. Well, look, one of the things too, I want to talk. I know you guys probably hate hearing me talk about the Constitution all the time. I'm like a big Constitution buff, but I want to talk about the Constitution because there's a very, very strong constitutional argument against the federal government getting involved in programs like this. And I'm gonna read it to you. Ready? Article 1. This is where all of the argument is too. Article 1, Section 8. The very first clause is a preamble. Right? It's just a section that tells you, it's like an introduction to the section. It says, the Congress shall have power to lay and collect taxes, duties, imposts, and excises, to pay the debts and provide for the common defense and general welfare of the United States. But all duties, imposts, and excises shall be uniform throughout the United States. Now, there's this huge battle over these words, right? Because between the Hamiltonian view and the Madisonian view, the left, essentially the left and the right, right? The way that the left reads this is they read that introduction as part of the primary powers of the government, right? So where it says that little section where it says provide for the general welfare, they feel like
you can hear the can of worms opening.
Right. They feel like that's where the government gets all of its wiggle room to do basically anything on Earth. And that's how I kid you not. You may think
As
I'm
long as their
exaggerating.
intention is your welfare.
Right.
It's like as long and we were doing this for your welfare, Eddie.
Yeah, right. And that's the thing. You can just say that about anything. Like you can say, look, I'm going to take, 120% of the taxes that I'm taking now. Like I'm going to take literally everything this person owns and give it away because general welfare. I'm going to take all the shoes off of everyone's feet because shoes might be bad for you at general welfare. Like you can literally, you could do whatever you want with that
And
game.
gas
Now,
stoves. Yeah.
there's another game that's played too that people kind of skip over, and that is there's a huge difference between providing for general welfare and providing general welfare, right? Like the Democrats like to just skip over that like they just like to act like that for doesn't exist in that word in the whole sentence. So they think that providing for general welfare is providing the welfare itself, right? There's a whole difference between allowing somebody an environment in which they can eat, in which they can thrive, in which they can perform commerce, in which they can live happy, healthy lives,
support themselves. Yeah.
and a government that actually gives them the food, gives them the stuff, right? Like those are two completely different things. And so literally it's like it's so weird that this one introduction is the entire it's two different battles that somehow the Democrats have leveraged into basically like half the opinions in America. I don't know how they've managed to do that, but somehow they've managed to do that. And like the other thing that it says that provide for the common defense and the general welfare. The common defense is like all over the place in the enumerated power section. In the rest of that article, like Article 1, Section 8, it's in like clause 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, like it's all over the place. It's like multiple clauses. Guess what other parts say something about general welfare? Nothing. And the reason for that is because common defense is providing general welfare. Commerce is providing general welfare. Like post office, all the other stuff in that enumerated power section are providing for your general welfare because it's just an introduction. That's it. That's all it is.
Yeah. Yeah. The government doesn't need to provide everything for you. It's just to set up a social structure where prosperity can take place, where they're not the biggest obstacle to you. They're not the ones stopping you from being. They don't need to feed you. They just need to be the ones who aren't stopping you from being fed.
Exactly. Now, the other section of the Constitution, you guys have probably heard me say this like 1,000 times, but the other section that you need to understand is the 10th Amendment, right? And I'm going to read that as well, all right? The powers not delegated to the United States by the Constitution, nor prohibited by it to the states, are reserved to the states respectively or the people, right? Now, what that means in layman's terms is if it isn't on that list that I just read from in Article 1, Section 8, if it's not expressly on that list, and it says like these words here where it says, nor prohibited by it to the states, like if it's not expressly something that the states can't do, then the federal government cannot do it. And I repeat, cannot, which means like, despite the fact that we've had some bad court cases, some bad rulings, SNAP benefits are not supposed to be done by the federal government. It's unconstitutional. So is Medicaid, so is Medicare, so is Social Security, on and on and on and on, right? Now, that's not me saying that these programs shouldn't exist. It's just me saying that they can't be done by the federal government.
The state should run them. Well, and this is the Department of Education, right? By shutting it down, the states can all have their own Department of Education. Right. And it's one thing to have, that's part of the thing. If you have a temporary stopgap, all right, some states don't have a Department of Education again. We'll do this temporarily. And now we're done. It's sort of like the temporary boost to ACA benefits during COVID, right? Temporary stuff has to end. And this is the the running joke is there's nothing quite as permanent as a temporary program or a temporary budget or something temporary. People become addicted to that. I understand you don't want to get off it, but it's part of growing. We're here, and the Republican Party is the party of grown-ups to say, look, we know you want this. We can't afford it. We're running a deficit. Do without. Do with less. Find a way out. And especially if you're illegal immigrants, you should know you're on a sandy foundation. And this is going to cause you problems. And maybe it's in your best interest if you want security to self-deport. Right. And all these things to help encourage that environment that's ideologically, and we ideologically do not want you relying on the government. We want the government to be a small part of your life as possible. That is anathema to the Democrats who want the government to be in every part of your life. Obama famously had this PowerPoint presentation of this woman and how the government was there with her, like almost like a parent through all the different stages of her life, right? I don't know if you remember that, but
he probably thought that was a good thing.
It's this paternalism or this sort of relationship with government that we in America was never intended, right? And I think that's right now with the shutdown. I think this is an opportunity to balance the budget, right? To really spend less on things. And I think it's good we're having this conversation on Snap. I don't think anybody would if we weren't and criticizing it. Now, that said, Trump, right, who is not a conservative like us, is willing to fund this, right? Yeah. He said, all right, just tell me, the judge has ordered him to, and he's saying, all right, just tell me how to do it.
Right.
If the government, as soon as I'd be more than happy to do this, but we've restarted. We can't borrow anymore.
Yeah.
Right. Government shut down. We can't borrow if we don't have this money. All the money we're going is to pay our debts. We can't borrow. We need the Democrats to approve it so that we can do it.
It's like, judges, would you like to supply the money? I mean, obviously, right. Like, obviously, this is okay. Here's one thing that I want to pose to everyone, right? Especially the left-leaning people out there in the audience. This is a scenario that I want everyone to just like work through in their minds, right? If you were walking down the street and you saw a poor person sitting down on the corner, holding his hands out, like asking for money, and you saw another guy walking down the street who was like obviously rich, a Armani suit and pulled out a wad full of cash to pay for his coffee or something. Yeah. Would you rob that rich guy? Like, just buy a gun and rob him and feed the poor guy? Because if the answer is no, if you wouldn't rob him, then making the government do it for you is not okay, right? Nothing changes.
Coveting is evil, is a sin.
Absolutely.
Coveting that guy's money, even if it's not for you, even if you're coveting that guy's money for someone else, still sin.
Still a sin. And right, nothing, like just like the difference between doing something and hiring somebody to do something bad for you. There's no difference there, right? You're still conspiring to commit whatever sin, whatever law you're breaking, right? Like, it's the same thing. So if it's not okay for the government to do it, then why are we? This is the thing, right? Because the moment they ask the government to do it, they can just like alleviate themselves of all responsibility. They're like, oh, well, it's not me robbing, it's just the government's doing it. Now we have to do it, right? That's the game, and it drives me nuts. Like, this is the thing. I have no problem with like somebody running like a SNAP program or a Medicaid program in a local community where everybody agrees, or even, you have like some kind of implied agreement by charter, like, say like if you exist in this community, you automatically agree to pool resources and stuff. I've got no problem with that. But I do have a philosophical problem with wealth redistribution unless people agree to it. Like, and it's not part of our charter as in the United States Constitution. Our charter, our founding document says that we actually can't do it at the federal level. Right? It's the only thing it said. Now, at the state level, I don't know. I'm not familiar with enough with Florida because I just moved here. I haven't learned our Constitution here yet, but I don't know if Florida can do it or not. But if they can, great. If not, great, right? Like we should just follow the laws of the land.
Generally, yeah. Preserve. You have a government. One of the reasons why we have a government is to help preserve and establish property rights.
Yes.
Right. So that we can have some security in that. And so, for the government to covet property in the name of what they define welfare, we're just doing this for your own good, right? We can't take something from you. All right. I'm not entitled to any of a wealthy man's money unless I provide value. And he chooses freely to exchange his money for that value. Right.
That's it.
Well, you can't. The compelling is right in small in general items. Yes, you tax for defense because the defense of the country is something that benefits everybody.
Absolutely.
So even people that hate war and hate the Department of War or our defense apparatus, they're still taxed on it because they still benefit from it, even if they're opposed to it.
And they live here in a nation where the founding charter says you automatically agree to this, right? Like that's one of the things, right? Like living in America, you agree to the United States Constitution, whether you do or not, like you do, right? So that's the game. And same thing for the local systems. If you're bound by a charter and you've chosen to live, there are other places in the world to live, right? Like anybody here who wants can go move off into the South American jungle and never be seen by another living soul again if they want to, right? Or at least for a long, 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 long time, right? I mean, that's the game. But the governments are here. That's why government is supposed to be minimalist, right? Because there are people that disagree with a lot of it, right? With the only reason that they're here is because they need the government to do things that they can't do by themselves, right? That's the whole point of like a government system. Otherwise, governments would never even exist. Like people would just live their own lives. The only reason we get governments together is for the very few items that we can't perform individually or locally as a community, right? Like national defense. I can't rescue somebody in Oregon from a nuclear attack. I can't. I'm just not that good, right? So I need help. I need the government to do that for me. I can, however, feed myself. I can feed my family because I can work a job. That's it. I'm able-bodied. And there are so many able-bodied people out there that are these are the people that are up for this docket, for this tug of war, right? These are able-bodied people who can get jobs, who can work, and the stats show that they'll be just fine, right? They're not going to starve to death. They're not going to deal with malnutrition. They'll be just fine. But the only reason they don't is because right now they don't have to, because they can just live off of other people's money. I mean, I'll never forget the fact that my roommate, after COVID, after getting outrageous like stimulus check after stimulus check and unemployment after unemployment after, this, that, and the other snap, this dude was making like $65,000 a year sitting on his butt. And I was over here at the same time struggling to make ends meet, while he's getting more free money for doing nothing than I was getting working a job, and he wouldn't even pay me rent. Meanwhile, he gets these job offers and he's like, well, I could go back to work, but I'm actually making more money not going back to work. I'm like, I mean, I should have thrown him out much, much, earlier, but I was trying to be nice, but like, man,
but God, I mean, part of the things, I worked all through COVID. And I made marginally more money, maybe $20,000 more than I would have made just sitting on my butt at home. But it helped lay the groundwork towards, other years. Now this year I'm doing a lot better, right? But it's because of a groundwork and things. So this is part of the thing, right? This is my last sort of point, and this was something that I read that on the Department of Wildlife, like the Interior. They say when you're in national parks, do not feed the wild animals because when they're there, they'll lose the ability. They'll become reliant on that food you give them and lose the ability to feed themselves, right? And so in the same year, Department of Agriculture, right, should take that to heart. If you feed people, they'll become reliant on it. They'll lose the ability to feed themselves. This is an important part of our social contract of being a citizen. is that we be as self-reliant as possible with help from charity organizations or WIC or some option of last resort for temporary or vulnerable times, but touch that with caution so that we don't become reliant on it and forget the means by which we can sustain ourselves and thus maintain our own freedom. And I think this is a big thing. Why we're suspicious of socialism. Socialism wants you to rely on the government, and so that their power becomes absolute. While federalism wants us to be independent, right? And as unreliant, self-reliant as possible. So that would be I hope something that we're learning, taking this opportunity to learn through this government shutdown.
Absolutely. And yeah, and right. And like, I should just point out that America became the greatest nation on earth, the most powerful nation on earth before all this welfare nonsense got implemented, right? Like, we became the most powerful nation on earth without that. Right. So like it's one thing for the left to like constantly be seeking for new things to do and change and stuff. And that you should always be at least cognizant of ways that you can improve. Always. Right. That's just general, like, good sense. But if you have achieved the pinnacle, if you've achieved the best of something on earth, you should acknowledge that there are probably some things that you're doing right that shouldn't be changed, right? Like, there's definitely some behaviors that are just already best, right? And so like we're the strongest on earth by like 1930 or something like that. We didn't need FDR's Great Society to like fix everything for us to become better, right? Like it probably hurt us, right, in the long run. And maybe temporarily it would have been fine, but like, yeah, these temporary measures just never go away. They like sunset clauses.
Bureaucracies are really good at staying alive.
Yes,
they're really hard to kill.
The last thing I'll say, last word on this is, if you have a national system that is socialist, then you can't have local systems that are capitalist and free. But if you have a national system that's capitalist, you can still have local systems that are socialist if you want them, right? So like, obviously the second one is the better of the two options, because it allows everybody who wants to be capitalist the opportunity to be capitalist, and everyone who wants to be socialist the opportunity to be socialist. So that's my thing on it. Anyway, Chris, you got anything else before?
I think people are going to be watching, and I hope that there's some common sense breaks on the worst of Mondomi's ideas. He's not anyone with real world experience, right? And so these all just sound really nice. If they're implemented, we're going to see some, I think, very clear examples of why conservative principles are important for governing, not just nationally, not just on a national level, but also on a local level.
Oh yeah, absolutely. If he starts like overcharging millionaires like he's talking about, they're just going to leave the city, right?
But he says whites should be charged higher.
Yeah,
This protected class to have higher taxes on people who are white. Though everybody who's Hispanic, I guess, it will be identified as white now. Yeah, we'll talk about that another time.
Right. All right, guys.
Thanks so much for watching.
Yeah. We'll catch you next time on Common Mansplaining.
Stay common.
Stay common.